The mansion sat deep in the woods, hidden from the world like a dark secret. It smelled of cedar and old money the moment I stepped through the heavy double doors. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I followed Tasha into the party. "This party is legendary," Tasha had told me on the ride over. "You'll love it. It's going to be unforgettable." Unforgettable, maybe. Love it? Not so much. From the moment I entered, I felt out of place, like a rough pebble in a sea of polished stones. The air was thick with perfume and cologne, and everyone was dressed to kill, but their smiles felt too sharp, their laughter too hollow. I babied a glass of champagne, more for something to do with my hands than for the taste. Tasha already disappeared into the crowd, chatting with someone tall and elegant near the fireplace. The party should have been like any other high society New Year's Eve bash, but something about the atmosphere was wrong. The guests' conversations dipped into whispers whenever I passed, their eyes flicking toward me and then away. As midnight approached, the room grew more tense. Conversations became quieter, laughter sharper. At 11:30, I noticed a man in a navy suit being ushered away by a group of hosts wearing elaborate masks. He looked confused, glancing over his shoulder as one of the masked figures placed a hand on his back and guided him through a side door. Curiosity and dread warred in my chest. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't let it go. Tasha was nowhere in sight, and I was alone. I slipped my champagne glass onto a nearby table and followed. The hallway they entered smelled musty, like damp wood and aged stone. The voices of the party faded behind me as I crept along, the carpeted floor muffling my steps. Ahead, a staircase descended into darkness, and I could hear faint murmurs below. At the bottom of the stairs, a heavy wooden door stood open. Candlelight flickered through the gap, casting shadows that danced across the stone walls. I peeked inside and immediately wished I hadn't. The basement was like something out of a nightmare. The air reeked of wax and something rancid that burned my nose. Black candles lined the room. In the center of the room was an altar, its surface dark and stained. The man in the navy suit lay bound to it, his chest rising and falling rapidly. I pressed a hand over my mouth, trying to suppress a gasp. My pulse pounded in my ears as I watched the masked figures gather around him. They chanted in a language I couldn't understand. At the head of the group was someone taller than the rest, wearing a golden mask that gleamed in the candlelight. They held a dagger. The chanting grew louder and faster. "Please," the man on the altar begged, his voice hoarse and trembling. "You don't have to do this." I wanted to scream, to rush forward and stop it, but my legs felt like bricks. The golden masked figure raised the dagger high. The chanting grew louder, and then the blade plunged down. The chanting stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie, unnatural silence. My entire body trembled as I moved away from the door, but as I moved, the floor beneath me creaked. "Who's there?" a sharp voice demanded from inside the room. I bolted. I sprinted up the stairs, my vision blurred with tears. Behind me, I heard footsteps and angry voices shouting. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I didn't stop. I burst through the door into the main hall, the brightness and noise of the party hitting me like a wall. I grabbed my coat from the rack and fled into the freezing night. I ran down the mansion's long driveway, my heels sinking into the snow. My fingers fumbled for my phone, stiff and numb with cold. Finally, I managed to dial 911. "Please," I panted, my voice breaking. "I need the police. There's been a murder at the mansion off Route 17. Hurry, please." The operator's voice was calm, asking questions I couldn't answer. Before I could say more, I heard crunching footsteps behind me. I turned my head and saw them, two masked figures, their golden masks. Adrenaline surged, and I veered off the driveway into the woods. The branches scratched at my arms and tore at my dress, but I didn't stop. My chest ached with every breath, my legs screaming for rest, but I ran until their footsteps faded. Hours later, I stumbled into a gas station, shivering and disoriented. I begged the clerk to call the police again, and this time, I waited until they arrived. By the time the officers reached the mansion, it was empty. The guests, the altar, the candles, everything was gone, leaving only faint wax drips on the basement floor. Tasha was never found. The police theorized she'd left with the rest of the guests, but I knew better. The memory of that room, the chanting, the dagger, none of it would ever leave me. Every New Year's Eve since, as the clock ticks toward midnight, I check the locks on my doors and windows, bracing for the sound of footsteps on the snow.